The place of black people in British history is sometimes thought of as a story that begins with the arrival of the Windrush. In reality, the Windrush is just one chapter in a much longer history. Black people have been living in this country for centuries, and the story of the black presence in the United Kingdom goes back all the way to Roman times. This is old history, the history that you don't learn at school. When I was 16, I went into a bookshop and I bought this book, Staying Power by Peter Fryer. And to black British people of my generation, this was the most important book in the world, because what it did was it showed us that we weren't new arrivals, but that we were part of a longer, deeper history that went back centuries. Because we're not telling key moments in British history, whole aspects of the story of Britain are simply being left out of the picture. And I think it's time that changed. That phrase, black British, that we're really used to today, I never heard that when I was growing up. To be black and to be British, well, they were two separate things. You couldn't really be both. To be black was not really to be British. And it was the history, it was books like Staying Power by Peter Fryer that showed me that there'd always been black British people.
Black British history is so diverse. It's just kind of a shame that at a young age, you can't really participate and celebrate in your identity.
How can you not want to learn about your past because you can't go forward without understanding your past?
When I talk to young black people, what they tell me is that they are as desperate as I was when I was their age to learn more about the longer history of the black presence in Britain, and that history is still not being taught to them at school.
When it came to learning about black history, it was mainly pumped within a month of something that should have been a year consistently. And it was kind of ranging from Mary Seacole to Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King.
What a lot of people are taught at school are the biographies of individual black people. And there's lots of good stuff that comes out of that. It's really great that kids now learn about Mary Seacole and they learn about Walter Tull. That's great, and I haven't got a problem with it. But if you only do that, what you find is you just create these isolated black characters, and what you don't learn about are the forces that led Britain to interact with Africa, interact with Africans. You don't learn about just how important the sugar slavery economy was in the 17th and 18th and early 19th centuries. We don't learn that Britain's relationship with the United States, economic relationship after the American War of Independence and right up to the Civil War, is founded on cotton, and that cotton is produced by African Americans, enslaved African Americans.
We're kind of told in a way that these things didn't happen in the UK, and we're told that certain things like this happened within America, and you know, it wasn't on our soil, and we treated black people great and well, and we provided all these things for them, when in the reality there was no difference.
It's great that we learn today about the biographies of individual black figures from the past, and those stories were important to me when I was growing up. But what we seem still to neglect are exploring other issues, things like the development of racial thinking in the 18th and 19th centuries, or the centrality of slavery to the British economy. Black history is more than just biographies. It is fundamental to understanding British history because it is a fundamental part of British history.
I don't know if this whole exclusionary history is like a nod to empire, laziness, or they just don't really care about black people, people of colour, working class, or women in general. I just don't know.
What the new science is proving is that there were Afro-Romans living in Britain. There are people who find it challenging, even threatening, that black people have been in Britain since Roman times. There are people who feel the need, when this is discussed online, to go on Twitter, to go on social media and discredit these ideas. There are people who would rather deny the facts than confront the quite simple, uncontroversial, in my view, reality, is that Britain was part of the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire was multiracial. One of the best examples is the ivory bangle lady. She was a middle-class Afro-Roman living in 4th century York. We know she was African because of the tests that had been done on her remains and because among her possessions was a bracelet made of African ivory. John Blank was a trumpeter in the court of the Tudors, in the court of Henry VIII, and he is the first Black Briton for whom we have not just a name and evidence from the archives, we have his picture. He appears on a document called the 1511 Westminster Tournament Roll. He is the first Black Briton whose name we can give a face to. That makes him really special. Among the documents that tell us something of the life of John Blank is a petition that he had written demanding a pay rise. Now, he's sending this petition to his boss, to Henry VIII. What that tells us is that this is somebody who values themselves. This is somebody who understands that their skills are worth something, and he's willing to stick his neck out and demand a pay rise from Henry VIII, and he gets his pay rise. When I was at school, I was taught about the Act of Abolition, that Britain freed the slaves. What I wasn't told was that Britain also compensated the slave owners to the tune £20 million. Now that's around £17 billion today. Slavery wasn't just abolished, the slave owners were compensated for their loss of property, human property. There was another part of the Act of Abolition that I didn't learn at school. What I wasn't taught was that the former slaves weren't freed immediately. They were made to work 45 hours a week for the next 4 to 6 years for their former owner in a system that was called apprenticeship. There is a specific moment in British history that I'm thinking about this year. We've marked lots of centenary anniversaries from 1914 to 1918, but there is another set of stories about another year. A year in which black soldiers returned from fighting but were not included in the victory parades. A year of race riots. A year in which a black man was lynched on the streets of a British city. All of that happened in the forgotten year of 1919.